Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible.
I sure do, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. We had a great month last month with our patrons. We did a lot of extras, several Zooms, a training session, a live Q&A. What else? An exclusive. I have to look at the calendar.
It was a busy month.
It was.
Really busy, good month. And these sessions were all well attended, which is really great.
Yeah, I thought too.
I was really happy about that.
So, we want to talk about today just about pain and how you manage pain in your life. There are so many, countless survivors. And not just survivors, just people going through all kinds of pain and trauma, death, sickness, church disputes. My inbox is absolutely flooded. We were just talking about that. I'm not even going to try to answer my emails this week. I'm not even going to try to answer them.
I know what you're talking about, and I get through Messenger at least 100 daily, and I can't individually answer all of those.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because every person that reaches out is hurting really bad.
There's so much going on, and I mean, let me tell you about yesterday. So yesterday was my wife's birthday. My day started at the church building. Our church building is right across the street from the hospital. But one of my church members came up, him and his wife, and a group of guys met. I should show you the picture. It's pretty funny. We had like the Motley Crew. A bunch of guys showed up and surprised Dave, my good friend, one of our church members, and we prayed with him before he went in for hip replacement surgery.
That is so awesome.
I left straight from there, and I picked up somebody else, a good family friend, and went to visit another church member who had a heart attack. And then on the way back, I was telling you, our friend, she's a widow, and her husband was one of our absolute best friends.
He sure was. For years.
Great.
Years. Considered him the next best thing to family,
yeah.
really.
Yeah, I had preached his funeral, and he died the day after Thanksgiving back in 2020, and that was a big loss for us as a family.
Oh my! Yes,
but also the church. He was so involved in the church. Was one of our deacons. I mean, just lovely man. So anyway, yesterday, I spent time with our good friend, his widow, and for 2 hours we just talked about how hard it is picking up the pieces after a death like that.
Sure is.
And she just kept saying, like, why did it happen when it happened? And she's like, we're at a point in our family where just there was this family peace, and he was so involved in the life of his grandkids. He had just entered into retirement, was spending so much time, loved spending time with the grandkids, was so involved in church, and then he just literally drops dead.
I think there are, Jimmy, as you and I were talking, number one, I don't think there ever is a time that is a good time for a person to die. Never.
And the mortality rate is 100%.
Right.
I mean, we're all going to die.
Right. And the older I get, I think about it constantly, my own death. I really do, and I need to probably stop obsessing over that. But it's like you watch the hourglass and the sand is just ticking through.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to keep dropping quicker and quicker with each passing year. But I think there's wisdom. Is wisdom and there are lessons in every death. That being that we can never, um, we who are left are never prepared for the
No,
one
no,
who dies. That's
nope.
number one. And number two, I think that business of waiting until to do something, um, we should never do that.
Yeah.
If I'm going to say, I love you to my children, I need to say it today, not
Mm-hmm.
wait until a special occasion, birthday or whatever, or when we're together next. Or if I feel it on my heart right this minute, I need to pick the phone up and say, hey, I really love you, and
Mm-hmm.
I am so glad I'm your mom. If it's a spending a cup of coffee time with someone, do it today. Don't
Yeah.
wait for 6 months. I have a friend, and I keep saying to her, let's have coffee. And she'll say, we really need to. I need to do that. And I'll say, when? When this week?
Mm-hmm.
And she'll never answer me. And I
Mm-hmm.
keep thinking, it's been over a year now, and I'd really like to have that cup of coffee with her. But she keeps, she's busy, and I get it. She has kids and all that. But the lessons there are don't wait for um, our surroundings to get better.
Mm-hmm.
We need to really be living to the fullest today. And
Yeah.
that's not always easy. We get caught up in the hustle and bustle of
It's
life. And
it's not. And
no.
I look around and see so much of this and so much pain and
Mm-hmm.
sorrow and unanswered questions. On Friday last week, some really good friends of mine and my brothers who went to college together, um, really good friends. Their son, who's about my daughter's age, um, he died. Um, he got sick. He got a brain tumor. Um, a few weeks later, he was gone. Then Friday, he passed away,
That's
and
awful.
really,
Yeah.
I hate to say unexpectedly, but they actually were pretty hopeful that
Mm-hmm.
he had a procedure and things were looking good,
Right.
and then all of a sudden he just went unresponsive and very quickly passed away. And it's those kinds of things that it completely changes your world, and it
It
changes it
does.
right now. And the same
Oh,
is true with
goodness.
abuse. The same is true
Yeah.
with death. The same is true with you mentioned the tornadoes in
Right.
Arkansas and
Oh,
Tennessee,
yeah. Oh,
Illinois.
my.
That the tornado in Arkansas that went through Little Rock, it also hit Jacksonville, 17 miles from my sister's
Right.
house.
Yeah.
Your daughter Sherry, and they were of course terrified, and thankfully
Well,
their house was spared, but there were
right.
others who weren't, and
When you
lives were
see,
lost.
right, when you see the devastation, what's touches down like for 3 minutes or less,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just 60 seconds, and
Mm-hmm.
can wipe out an entire community.
Yeah.
Um, we work and slave so much over physical things, way too much, really.
Mm-hmm.
Building our homes and making them look comfortable and feel comfortable and keeping up with the painting and keeping up with
Mm-hmm.
remodeling and all that. And I know that's important, but it's not the most important
Yeah.
thing. It truly isn't. And death stops us in our tracks and helps us to reevaluate, I
Mm-hmm.
think, and to reprioritize what's important, truly important in our lives.
It does. Yeah.
But
And
it's a
and
painful, painful journey.
it is.
Painful.
And
Yeah.
so my friend that spent time with yesterday, she mentioned a close family friend, who it's a married couple, and they're at another one of our sister churches here in town, and he gets COVID and ends up dying, and very very within a month or two
The other,
of the other
her
death.
husband, yes.
And she just said, why? She said, there was my husband at our church, his friend at the other church, and they were so much a part of that
Oh,
church,
yeah.
and they were so helpful and so involved.
They
and
were
and
good
they're
people,
gone, and they're
and I
great
think we
people.
question that all the time. Why these people? On this podcast we talk so much about those who are intentionally hurting people, and
Mhm.
yet they seem to live on.
Mhm.
And then you see these good people, and um, their lives are taken, or they're, you know, hurt deeply by abuse by these
Mhm.
others. Um, I was reading yesterday about a parent. She's a single parent, three beautiful children. Her husband had died. Children are in a car, and they're traveling to the school, and a drunk driver came along, and all three of them were
Hmm.
killed. And so she's now got her husband and her three children gone, but the drunk driver got out of the car unharmed. And you
Mhm.
have to question, you know, why. I
Yeah.
think we all go through that.
Absolutely,
The
and I think
why.
that's part of the process, and that's part of questioning. When I wrote about it in my
Mm-hmm.
book, like I questioned why God, why would you allow all these kids to be harmed?
Right.
And then the whole timing thing, that was the question yesterday. Why now?
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
When kids are at their absolute most vulnerable and they need their parents, that seems to be when parents are stripped away from them.
Mm-hmm.
Due to
And
health,
right.
health
Oh
problems
yeah.
or
Right.
accidents or whatever.
Right.
Um, not that it's not really bad when those kids are adults and their parents die, but when those kids are little kids and they need their
Oh,
parents, that seems to
a
be when
child doesn't
tragedy strikes.
survive without a parent,
Yeah,
or a guardian of some sort.
yeah,
It's impossible.
yeah,
That is their survival.
yeah.
So you're right.
So those are the kinds of questions that I think it's okay to ask, and I think that's something I'd like to see more um, in the advocacy community, where people talk about these things, because these are daily struggles, and
They
we
are.
see people just wrestle and wrestle with why now. Number one, why did this
Mm-hmm.
happen? And two, why now?
Right.
Why didn't this happen at
Mm-hmm.
some other time? It could not have happened at a worst possible time. And this is kind of a minor thing, but it's another one of those examples. So our good friend who had his hip replacement surgery, um, he he was moving things. They have two houses. They just bought a house, and so they're emptying out the old house and they're going to sell it.
Okay.
So with his bad hip, he's trying to move things. He gets his car packed full, and he's on the way from one house to the other, and he's like, I hear something snap. And
Oh no.
he's like, and of course he can't move, so
Right.
he can't really crawl underneath it.
Exactly.
And his car starts, kind of
Oh
like
no.
swaying down the road.
Oh.
Well, here his sway bar bracket had rusted, and
Oh.
it broke off. And when it broke off, it took his brake lines out too. So his
Oh
brakes went out,
no.
and he was like, "Come on!" He's like,
Oh.
"The day before my surgery," he was like,
Oh.
"Of all the times for this to happen, why now?
Yeah.
Why now?" He's like, "This is the last thing I
And that
needed."
might seem like a minor thing to some, but when it's happening to you, it's a major
Mm-hmm.
thing. It really
Yeah.
is, because
Yeah.
it's not easy when you're in critical pain, as he was.
Mm-hmm.
When you're up against a time limit, you know you're going to be laid up for weeks
Mm-hmm.
due to the surgery. You're trying to get things done, and then this. And we do question why.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
And it
So,
always seems to hit, like, all these tragedies happen at the worst possible time, always.
you're right. You're right. I remember being, when I was younger, with your kids, there wouldn't just be one sickness, there'd be five, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe five different things going on with your kids. Then you add the van that would break down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, my sway bar
Mm-hmm.
that went, the brakes that went, no money to pay for anything. And
Mm-hmm.
I can remember crying out to God, why? What more?
Mm-hmm.
Little did I know what was in store for our family.
Yeah.
And it's better that I didn't know.
Yeah. Well,
Better.
yeah. I mean, yesterday, there were 6 words that were spoken by our friend, and she said, after losing my husband and after really struggling and going through depression and not wanting to eat and just anger at God,
Right.
going through
Yeah.
all these emotions which are perfectly normal and perfectly acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
She said, in the end, there's one lesson that has changed my life, and she said, you have to feel the pain.
Mm-hmm.
You have to allow
I
yourself to
so
feel the
agree
pain.
with that. And not everybody gets it, but until we do, I don't think we can move beyond that
Mm-hmm.
where we are until we really face the pain head on. It's kind of like facing a storm. We can hide sometimes from a storm, but that doesn't necessarily take care of things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, we have to face what it is and brace for it
Yeah.
and just really work our way through.
And accept it.
And
Accept that it.
and that's
I mean,
another thing
and that's
that is
Sherry,
big. Yes.
on one of her Facebook posts, she
Mm-hmm.
said, go driving around and seeing the shock on
Mm-hmm.
people's faces,
Right.
standing at what used to be a house,
Right.
and now it's a slab,
Rubble.
and
Just
there's just
rubble.
shock, pure shock.
It
And I
is.
remember, I mean, that same area, and
Mm-hmm.
they live in, it is absolute tornado alley. I mean, it
Yeah.
is like,
They're right in the path.
it
Yeah,
is.
they
I
are.
used to
Yeah.
I lived down there for
Mm-hmm.
10 years, and I remember really, really bad one. This was a monster tornado
I
that it took
remember your
actually her
kids
town.
helping with the cleanup
Yeah,
with
so
that.
it was her
Yeah.
town, and the next town
Right.
over got annihilated. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like there were
Right.
houses. I have a picture of one house that, or what used to be a house. There was nothing left but a piano.
Mm-hmm.
That was literally the
Weren't
only.
there cows that were?
Yeah, there was a
Yeah,
cow
I
that
remember.
landed, and there was no farm. That was at
Right.
the school
I
in BB.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Uh,
I have a
yeah.
picture of it, and it's like you look around, and there's just destruction as far as you can see,
Mm-hmm.
and the people who live there, like I remember pulling up, and one lady, she yelled at us, and we never said anything because we understood like the shock that
Right.
they're in,
Oh yeah. Oh
and
my.
we were kind of in shock, and we didn't live there,
Right.
we were the
Ah.
next town over,
Right.
but seeing just the utter destruction and the
Mm-hmm.
power of those
Oh
storms,
yeah.
and it literally left nothing behind. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it wiped houses clean off the foundation. And this one lady, she said, she kind of cussed us out, and she's like, "I wish you would quit staring at our pain." She's like,
Mm-hmm.
"We lost everything, and you're driving around staring at us and, making a spectacle of it," which is not what we were doing. We were
No,
actually
I
there to
know.
help.
To help. I
Um,
know. Yeah.
but it's just that
Mm-hmm.
it's that utter shock, and you have to accept that what was here 60
Mm-hmm.
seconds ago,
It's gone.
it's gone,
It's
and it's
gone.
not coming back.
No.
It's gone.
And I think that's the hard part too, Jimmy, with any of the pain that we're talking about, whether it's child abuse. Once that child is abused, you can never give that
You
child
can't
back.
unabuse the child.
You
Yeah.
can't. You
No.
can never give that portion of childhood back to that
Hmm.
child. I think I will grieve that forever about my daughters.
Hmm.
I can. There's nothing that will give them that portion of their childhood back ever. Um, Deaths when we love someone dearly. Your brother Mike, I was having a struggle this morning. I bought plants for his memorial garden, and I was going to plant them this morning, and then I thought, no, I'm not in the right frame of mind. I just sat and thought a long time how his family changed so much
Hmm.
since his death. 42 years old, three children, young wife. Suddenly the storm hit,
Hmm.
and they're not through that raging storm yet, 8 years later.
Yeah.
There's still devastation, still pain,
Hmm.
but they're beginning now to face head on that pain. But
Yeah.
for a long time, you just stand in utter despair.
Hmm.
And I think the words are, how do you begin to put your life back together again?
Yeah.
Whether it's from a tornado or from death or illness,
Yeah.
how do you begin? Where do you begin?
Well, I mean, that was the interesting thing too. Talking to her, and she, she cried, and
Sure.
she said, we looked over, and she's like, every time I look at that chair, she said, I will never get rid of that chair. She said, every time I look at that chair, I see him sitting there reading his Bible.
And he did. And they read their Bibles together. She told me every morning they had a brief devotional for years together. They were faithful like that. I have to believe that when we build on a strong foundation like that, we'll get through. And we talked about the foundation that God's given us way back in our very first beginning podcast on abuse. And it still stands true for everything we're facing, doesn't it? It really, really does. I think we see humans at their best when we're facing devastation and pain. It changes people's hearts of those around us. They want to help. There's a kindness that you don't normally see, a compassion. But at the time when you're in the pain, nothing helps, does it? Nothing. Nothing.
No, and I think, that's where she's 100% right. Like, you have to feel the pain. You have to accept it. You have to feel it. That doesn't mean that you're not going to go through a period of extreme shock, but you have to feel the pain. And then she said what really has helped her is once she accepted, he's gone, he's not coming back. No. She felt the pain. And then she said, she's like, I know it sounds bizarre, but I started surrounding myself with people who had also experienced it. And she's like,
nothing, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And she said, we right. There. And she said, we encourage each other. Right. We care for each other. We check up on each other. Absolutely. Her neighbors, while we were there, she got a text from one of the neighbors, and she's like, we just check up on each other all the time. And we make sure everybody's okay. Yes. Yep. And I was like, how cool is that? And it's just,
that's how it's supposed to be, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'll never take away, you'll never erase the pain and the tragedy and the sorrow, but you can take that and you can heal and you can make something beautiful out of that. Right. And you can be a beautiful person to somebody else, which helps you also in your healing journey.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, life is full of ups and downs. It always will be. There's life, there's death.
A lot of ups
there's
and
marriage,
downs
there's
sometimes.
divorce.
I know, yeah.
There's light, there's darkness. Right. There are always going to be good things and bad things our entire lives. And so as long as we help each other and help move through and not be like, I'm looking at, I made the mistake again. I hate looking at the news. I made the mistake of looking at the news, and I look and I'm like, a little over a week ago, we have these little kids who are killed in the school shooting, and the teachers. You have 6 innocent people whose lives were brutally taken.
Terrible.
And now I look and I'm like, all these spoiled brats are in New York City protesting, and it turned violent because Trump is. There's a trial, and it's people on both sides, and like not a there's no political stance. It's people on both sides are clashing with each other, and they're like picketing, and and I'm like, just
get over it.
Let the justice system do whatever it's gonna do, and just be a decent human being. If you're gonna protest, fine. If that's not how I want to spend my time, but if you want to protest. Go protest, do it peacefully, and go home to your family at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And let other people go home to their families.
Life is precious.
Yeah.
Life is to be lived in a way that we treasure it. And I think we're losing some of that when we get tangled up in all those messes.
Yeah.
We really do.
Yeah. But, I think the more we enter into that pain and accept it, embrace it, know that it's not going away. I think the quicker we can heal, maybe not quicker, but the more fully we can heal, because it's on its own timeline. I mean, at the end of the day, it's on its own timeline.
But I think you're right, Jimmy. I think that when we avoid our pain, and maybe it's by drugs, alcohol, busying ourselves with extra work, we talked about this together a little bit. I have a friend who quit her job immediately when her husband died, moved away, and in less than a year, she took her own life.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't handle. She tried to avoid the pain. Doesn't work. We
Yeah.
have to wade through that. We really do.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing. It
Mm-hmm.
really is. But if we remember that at the end of that dark tunnel, we'll begin to see some light. It helps to
Yeah.
have somebody near us that reminds us of that. With abuse, I think there will always be the occasional, hopefully only occasional nightmares,
Mm-hmm.
the thoughts of what happened, the anger of why did it happen. But it lessens as we begin healing and we accept, okay, this is who I am. This did happen to me. Really did.
Yeah.
And now I have kind of the responsibility, I guess, to decide what do I do with my life from this point on?
Mm-hmm.
What do I do with my life? I know I do a lot of thinking about that every day when I get up. Is there something that I can do today that will be productive and worthwhile to someone? When we do that, we help ourselves also. We
Yeah.
truly do.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to share with you guys a resource, and Granny will never peddle her own hard
No.
work that she does, so I'm going to peddle it for her because this is a labor of love. She's been doing this for years and years. She is an author many times over, has an excellent writing style, has an
Thank you,
excellent,
Jemmy.
yeah.
Gee.
Um, and so this is her website, and the website does not show up on. See if I can actually pull it up here. There we go. So it doesn't show up here on the at the top, but the website is silentgriefsupport.com. Silentgriefsupport.com. And she blogs there pretty regularly. She took a little bit of a break because we had a hard year last year.
We did.
But she's back blogging regularly now. She has her books, which are all phenomenal. She has a digital course that's extremely affordable. And it's just a good, helpful website with good conversations about grief, especially relating to the loss of loved ones, child loss, those sorts of things. It's just a phenomenal website and resource. So I wanted to plug that
Thank
for
you,
her
Jimmy.
because we're talking
Thank you.
about
We are.
sorrow, and
Yeah.
those are almost virtually free resources. And you
They
have
are,
prided
right.
yourself in
Yes.
not charging people
Right.
for the things you write. There's a newsletter which I'm subscribed to. I got my newsletter when you just sent it out.
Thank you. Good.
So there's a newsletter if you subscribe to the website, and it's not spammy. I don't get any spam whatsoever. She's not selling my name to the devil.
Trust me, I pay bukus of dollars every month to take
Yeah.
care of that.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
So
yeah.
you will only receive the updates that she personally sends out
I would
when
like
you
to say on
subscribe.
YouTube too. There are the videos.
Yeah.
That if people.
And then Facebook. There's
Yes,
Silent
Facebook.
Grief, Child Support, Child Loss and Support,
Yes, it's there. Just
which is now just under 300,000
Yeah.
people.
Which is, as you were talking about our friend receiving the text and people checking up on her, through the Silent Grief Support Facebook page, it's awesome because we've had only 2 retreats. So the one was a mini retreat. Jimmy and his wife Natalie helped me with the first retreat. We are friends yet, tight, close friends with those people who attended that first retreat. And there is a group of people on Facebook yet that check with each other from 25 years ago plus. And I think that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That friendships are made from that site because they have the common thing of loss.
Yeah.
And they know how to help each other.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that in the abuse community. We need something like that where
Yeah, for sure.
abuse survivors are helping each other. This is how I got through this part, and this is how, I can help you. And that's just those things are important.
Yeah, for
Very
sure.
important.
Yep, but you have to feel the pain.
You do.
And when you do that,
You do.
yeah, I think there's tremendous hope on the other side. There is healing. There is a point where you reach a point of restoration, and you feel whole. Maybe not complete, but you feel whole again. You feel more yourself. You
can get to enjoy life again. I know those first couple years after a death or trauma of any sort, discovery of abuse, whatever it is, it's hard to smile and feel laughter.
Yeah.
You really think it's never going to happen, but it does eventually. And we need to hear that.
It does.
We truly
Yeah.
need to hear more of that.
Yeah.
Life does get better. Life
It
gets
does.
smoother. Life gets more gentle.
And you
So-
meet a lot of good people along the way.
Yeah,
So,
check the website. I really do hope you'll check the website out. And whether you've gone through a physical loss of someone dear and close to you, we can think of the death related to the death that abuse causes. And abuse does. It's very similar in many ways to a
Yes.
death. You'll glean a lot of help, I think, from the website.
I agree.
Thank you.
So, yeah, go check it out, share it, spread the word.
Use it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning into this episode. And as always, we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.